Hello and welcome to the Scottish Clans. I'm Clint. Thank you for joining me today. Today we are going to be discussing a unique group of kindreds within Scotland. But before I get to that, let me give a shout out to my sponsor, USA Kilts. If you have any desire to wear anything on your body that expresses your pride in your Scottish heritage, in your or maybe like Welsh or Irish, because they branch out, but they focus on the Scottish. That's their specialty. Their specialty is kilts, and they make dang fine kilts. So go to usakilts.com if you want to get yourself some of that stuff. Or you can go over to YouTube and they check out their YouTube channel, which is USA Kilts and Celtic Traditions. Lots of good content on there. I watch them fairly regularly. Haven't scratched the surface of all their content because they've got a lot on there, but they have some good content on there. So I recommend them to you. Go check them out. USA Kilts and Celtic Traditions on YouTube or usakilts.com. All right, guys, just to cut to the chase, we're going to be talking about kindreds that are descended from Flemish settlers in Scotland. Now, isn't this interesting? I don't know whether you think it is or not. I think it's interesting because these guys produce some very influential kindreds in Scotland. We might even call them clans. They're usually, let's talk about the story about how they get up into Scotland. Usually they're part of a group of people we just lump together and we call them all Normans, as though it was one homogenous group. The more I've learned, I found out that's a false conception, a misconception even. So we've already discussed, in earlier episodes, a while ago, we discussed the Breton contingent within the Normans. And so descended from those Bretons, you have the Elliots and the Stuarts. So once again, I just barely mentioned the Elliots as far as a notorious border kindred. The Stuarts, do we need to really talk about how big of a deal they were in Scotland? I don't think so. Now, let's go to the other side. So the Brittany is on the west of Normandy, if you're looking at the map of France. To the east, you have Flanders, and that's where we're going to get some of these people that we talk about today. So they jump in with the Normans. Now, am I saying that all Flemish settlers came with the Norman invasion? No, I am not. But the ancestors of these clans did, and we'll talk about which specific clans those were later. They're coming with the Normans. They come into England through conquest. They go into Wales via conquest. And I'm specifically talking about these Flemish people. They find themselves settled by Henry I in around the year 1100. They're settled in Pembroke, the Pembroke part of Wales. They settle in there, and maybe a generation or so later is when they follow David I up into Scotland. And by invitation. So the Normans in Scotland are a different story. And when I say Normans, I'm talking about actual Normans, talking about Bretons, Flemish. They come into Scotland under very different circumstances than they go into the other countries within the Isles. They come into English by conquest. They go into Wales by conquest. Ireland is a little bit of a mix. If you want to know, if you really want to do a deep dive of the Norman experience in Ireland, I got two channels to recommend to you. You have Philip that runs Irish Medieval History, and Mike that runs Clans and Dynasties. These are two YouTube channels, and these guys jump into detail. They love talking about the Normans in Ireland. You got guys like the Fitzgeralds, the Butlers, the Burkes, and a bunch of others. And in some cases, you have this phrase, more Irish than the Irish themselves. This going native Gaelicization, assimilation that the Normans tended to do very well, and Scotland was no exception to that. They come into Scotland, and we have those kindreds that had settled up in the Highlands and had absolutely assimilated up there. So you had the Frasers of Lovat, you have the Chisholms, you have the just thought of one. You have the anyway, you got a bunch of them that they go. Oh, I was thinking the Stuarts. The Stuarts, they have different branches of the Stuarts, and they settle up in. You have one branch that becomes the Stuarts of Appin, and I've talked about them in times past. The Stuarts of Athol, and they go native. They become Highlanders. The Stuarts of Appin are absolutely a Highland clan. You have Alexander Stuart, the Wolf of Badenoch, who seemed seem to prefer Gallic company. I think that's a good way to say that. So anyway, the Normans did a good job of going native. So let's talk about these. So you got the stop in Wales the settle in there around 1100. Oh, by the way, my source, I've got to mention my source, Amy Eberlin, who's at the University of St. Andrews. This was her PhD work, was focusing on the Flemish in medieval Scotland. I will leave a link to that. So this is PhD work that she's been doing, and through that link you'll be able to find several articles that she's written on this subject. And I have not read all of them, but I've read, 3 or 4-ish, and they're very informative, very interesting, especially if you're descended from one of these groups. I really recommend you get in the notes, click this link, and begin your own research from there. So, and isn't it nice that we can get some scholarly sources on this? Because we can't always find super scholarly stuff, but in this case, I was fortunate. That often, by the way, if you have a recommendation or a request for me to do a certain clan, which I do get it from time to time, my sources tend to drive what I want to talk about. If I can find good sources on it, then I'm more likely. So if you have awesome sources that you can pitch into it, that increases the likelihood of me being able to grab a hold of that and turn it into an episode. All right, back on task here. So you have this group. They stop in Wales for a generation or so, and then they push up with David I, invited by him, so to help him take his throne back, which works. And so they're given positions all over Scotland, all over. Some places more than others. The Canmore dynasty, they really liked to use these incoming Normans and put them in hot spots. And in this case, specifically Flemish people, they'd put them in hot spots where the native lords resented the expansion of the kings of Alba and pushed back against that. And by the way, The Outlaws of Medieval Scotland by R. Andrew MacDonald is a great book to learn about this time period where the kings of Alba, or what would become Scotland, they're trying to expand. They're trying to push into the Western Isles. And so there you have them getting into Norwegian business, because that area has been under Norwegian control for generations, a long time. And then you have down in the very southwest of Scotland, you have Galloway, and you have Fergus, Lord of Galloway. You have Somerled in the Isles. He's come to power. You have up in the very far north, you have Harold Madison, and you have the remnant of you always see it spelled Maceth. I really think the name is Mackaythe, what would become the Mackays, the A-E, or there's different ways I've seen it. The older way is A-E-D, but I think that D was pronounced a little bit with a TH, like Ide, and so that becomes Heth. I've been really looking and trying to research this and trying to make that linguistic connection, but that may have been the Mackays or the Mackays who are descended from this group of people who had rebelled against the kings of Alba and may have been tied into the royal house of Murray. So you have these hot spots all over Scotland, and these Flemish immigrants get used to put in all these frontier areas. So the Stuarts, as newcomers, they get pushed into the Clyde area on the south bank of the Clyde estuary as it comes in. They get positioned there so that they can kind of be a buffer against Somerled and his group. You have kindreds like the Bruces and Balios. Now I'm not talking Flemish, I'm talking about just Norman general. Although I did see a list in some of Amy Eberlin's work here where she says the Balios may have been Flemish Norwegian. I haven't pursued that. There's a lot of names in there that I was like, I don't think that one is. It almost kind of made it look like everybody in Scotland's descended from the Flemish. So take this for a grain of salt, but they put the Bruces and the Balios down in the area they did to kind of contain the natives in Galloway, who tended to be a little surly at times, which does bring me to very specific. Well, the Flemish people, as they come into Scotland with David I, they're the kind of the leader, the main figure that they rally around is Baldwin of Biggar. He seems to be the leader of this group. He may be the progenitor of those who go by the Fleming surname, the actual last name Fleming. He's mentioned in the Clan Fleming Wikipedia page, but then no connection is made between him and later bearers of the surname. So I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not claiming that he is for sure their ancestor. They do mention him in there. Take that for what it's worth. However, we're a little bit more confident that one of the people who came in there with him from Pembroke in Wales and came up with him was Freskin, son of Olek. Now, Freskin is a very prominent figure. So I've kind of got two types of podcast episodes going here. I've got my clan cluster episode where we take clans that are similar to each other and kind of talk about their connection. Often it's blood connection, but it's not always. And then we also have the clan founder episodes I've done. I've done episodes on Ghost Patrick, who the Humes and the Dunbars are descended from him. We talked about Summerled, all the McDonald's and their branches, like the McKeons of Ardnamurchan and the McAllisters, and then the McDougals and the McRorys, and they're all descended from Summerled. This would be kind of like taking those two categories of podcast episodes and mixing them together, because Freskin is a very prominent figure here. He comes in, he gets some land at Strathbrock, which I think is over more in the Lothian area, and so does Barrowald. So far I've mentioned these three Flemish knights, you could call them. Baldwin of Biggar, Freskin, son of Olek, and Barrowald. Freskin and Barrowald are part of the group that gets tasked to push up north to contain the rebellion of the people in Murray. And I've gone into length on what's the dynamic between Murray and Alba, and that goes clear back to like Dalriada days. So, some of that stuff, like with Canale Navrine and Canale Lorne. But you have, so Freskin and Barrowald are pushed, they come up the east coast, and they are major contributors to the kings of Alba being able to contain that and suppress that rebellion. They're rewarded with lands in Murray, on the south shore of the Murray Firth. So Freskin becomes the progenitor of a kindred that would first call themselves de Moravia. But from this group of people would spring the Sutherland kindred or clan and the Murrays, and I think we're very secure in calling those kindreds clans. And then also you have from Barrowald, who obtains lands just not very far east of Freskin's lands, and you have, and the lands are already called Innis, and so from Innis, then you get the name of the kindred, McInnes, not McInnes. I was going to say, don't get it confused with the McInneses. That's a different group. This group is just called Innis. They are Flemish, and they are descended from Barrowald, who with Freskin went north to contain and suppress the rebellion, and were rewarded with lands up there. So hopefully I straightened that out and you didn't get too turned around there. Now there's another person that I might mention there. His name is Theobald, and he may have been the father of William of Douglas, who was the first to style himself of Douglas, taking his name from the lands there, because Douglas actually comes from a Gallic origin. But so he takes the surname from the place name, and now you have this clan who become known as the Douglases, who have actually a Gallic last name, but are actually Flemish descent. And then another one that I just want to kind of throw out there is the Lockards. The Lockarts. Because there's somebody, Locard, who's supposedly with this group, and I tried to chase this down. I looked at the American Clan LockartSociety.org, and it just regurgitates their website, which I've praised the Rutherford website, I've praised the Campbell website. The Lockarts need to step up their game here, I think. They just regurgitate the Wikipedia article, or the Wikipedia article is regurgitating them, one or the other, but they both say that the founding kindred came to Scotland from England, fleeing William the Conqueror. Well, if they're fleeing William the Conqueror, then they are Anglo-Saxons. They weren't in the Norman contingent, whether they were actual Normans, Bretons, or Flemish. So I didn't really get where they were going with that. And then Yeah, anyway, so does that where, so is this Lockhart, is that where the Lockharts come from? I don't know, guys. But I'm just telling you, there was a Flemish guy came up whose name was Lockhart, and he may have something to do with that kindred. If you guys know the for sure answer, there's probably somebody out there who knows that, and you can just post the comment in down below. But anyway, so there you have it. There you have this core of Flemish immigrants coming up into Scotland. They did wonderful things for David I and his descendants and were granted lands and titles, and now we have these kindreds that come from them. Now let me pause real quick to give a shout out to my sponsor, USA Kilts. Guys, I've got 2 kilts from USA Kilts, and they're both awesome. Now the one is admittedly higher quality. It's more expensive. That's my McFarlane hunting tartan kilt. And I had that, and then I was like, well, yeah, but I like hiking, and kilts are perfect to hike in for all you people who are outdoorsy out there. But I don't know about taking my nice kilt, all wool, high quality, out in the brush where it's dirty and twigs and things are grabbing onto it, and I don't know about that. So I went with, I also got one of they call it a casual kilt. It's less expensive and it's made from different material. It's a little bit more resilient to stains or being grabbed by branches and stuff. So guess what? I've got 2 kilts. I told you the first one's in the McFarlane hunting, and the other one is in the Macduff hunting. And I have a whole story about why I went with that. It's in previous episode. So go check it out. Guys, it's fine quality. I love both my kilts. I love the other accessories that I bought with them from them. So that my point here is that they make really nice quality stuff. If you want to express your heritage, their pride in your heritage, go to usakilts.com and get something off of there, because they just have more things than I can even advertise for on here. The other thing I'd like you to check out is go on their YouTube channel, USA Kilts and Celtic Traditions. They have so much cool stuff on there. If you're going to get into the kilt thing, or if you recently have got into the kilt thing, or if you've been in it for a while but you've never really dove into it, they've got so much good content on there. So go check them out. Also go to my point is it's not just kilts and episodes about kilts on their YouTube channel. They've got Scottish culture, history, all sorts of cool stuff on there. So if you want to know anything about kilts or jump into some of their cool episodes on the history and culture, go check them out. USA Kilts and Celtic Traditions on YouTube. Guys, so let me do a recap here with what we've learned about the Flemish in Scotland. They came in with the Normans. There would be more Flemish come in later, but the ones who begat these major clans in Scotland came in with the Normans. They made a stop in Wales and Pembroke. Then with David I, they came up into Scotland, where they were put in very strategic positions. You have Baldwin of Biggar, who's in the Lanark area, Lanarkshire, and he may be or may not be the progenitor of the Fleming kindred. You have Theobald, who may be the progenitor of the Douglases, and that's the way that Amy Eberlin presents it. And then you have Freskin and Barrowald, who are taken used by the Scottish kings to push up north. He plants them up north because they help him quell rebellion in Murray, and for their services. And they seem to be I'm just gathering that these are very capable men, very high caliber people, and the kings of Scotch are grateful to have them. Freskin is given lands up there in Duffus, and Barrowald is given lands just east of that in Innis. Now, the Barrowald's descendants will take their name from Innis, and they will become the Innis family, or the Innis clan, or kindred, however you want to say it. And so the descendants of Freskin they will style themselves de Moravia. In the Gallic, when you pronounce Murray, it's actually more like Murav. And so it's actually just adding in Latin IA on the end of Murav. And that's where you have the Sutherlands come from the senior line of this kindred, and the Murrays also come from this kindred. To be more specific with that, you have Freskin, and then you have his son William. Then you also he has 2 sons, Hugh and William. Hugh becomes Lord Sutherland, and that's where we get the Sutherland kindred, who become an actual clan, once again, very integrated into the Highlands. There is, the genealogical history of the Earlham of Sutherland, which is a contemporary 1600s, is written in 1600s by a Gordon. And the Gordons actually inherited the Earldom of Sutherland and the leadership of the Sutherland kindred. So that's interesting, because that didn't happen all the time. Like with Ross, you had the Earldom of Sutherland that went out of the family, but they kept the leadership of the kindred in-house. So there's a couple different ways, and I've done episodes on that too before. So this Earlham of Sutherland, the main core of the Sutherland clan would have been descended from Freskin, from his older son Hugh, while the Murrays descend from his son William. And then he had another son named Andrew who became the Parson of Duffus, and I didn't really see anything about his descendants and who they became, so if you got something on that, add it to the conversation. Guys, that's all I got for you. So we have Douglas, Innes, Sutherland, and Murray, who come very, very prominent Scottish clans, and there's a bunch of other minor ones. So go check out Amy Eberlin's work on the University of St. Andrews website. Follow the link I'm going to include in the comments here. And there's so much more to read on this. So there you go. I've given you a lot of, if you want to dive into this farther, a lot of resources to do that with. Guys, I've got a lot of things cooking on this, so I'm excited for what I've got coming in the future. I'm working on an online course on the origin of the Scottish clans. I've got some free PDFs. I did a little test on this. My sister actually did it for me. And so if you want to go on scottish-clans.com/1587, you can get a PDF of the government, the Act of Parliament, and in it are named a bunch of the clans in there and why they're listing these clans. And it's cool to see 1500s. There's some really interesting things that you can actually gain a lot from in your study of the Scottish clans by looking at who the government had their eye on. And it mentions Highland clans and border clans, 1587. So that's scottish-clans.com/1587. And then I just have another one recently that's a PDF on general wage report on the Highlands. And that one is at scottish-clans.com/Wade if you want general wage report on the Highlands, which also has a ton of cool lists, how many men each Highland chief could bring to battle and all that stuff. So go check them out. And until next time, Martin Lev and Drasta.